Welcome to Carrickfergus Vineyard, a place of hope where lives are changing. We're a church in the heart of Carrickfergus, passionate about seeing people's lives changed by the love of Jesus. The following message was given at one of our Sunday services.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. The music does finish. Bet you weren't expecting to see me this morning. So Paul dumped this on me about 2 days. No, I didn't. I've been working on this for a while, so I have. It's great to be back. I have missed the last 3 weeks. I've been away with work, and then I was away skiing for a couple of weeks. Weather was terrible. I got wet one day. I was soaked. It took me a whole evening to dry my stuff out. But it's great to be back. It's amazing how much you miss this place. You know, we seem to take it for granted every week that we just sort of come here, but I was actually really looking forward. As Philip and I drove over the hill this morning, as we do most Sunday mornings, you're just looking at the sunlight as you come down into Carrickfergus. I'm like, it's good to be back. It's good to be in a place of hope where lives are changing. So, you've got me this morning. This is Mark on Mark. Sergey's slowly disappearing. The young adults thing, can I not still identify as a young adult? I know I'm almost 50, but I still feel like I'm a young adult. I want to go to cause. It sounds amazing. But yes, I can't identify as a young adult anymore. But yes, I think Sergey's slowly disappearing and Mark is coming around after 50 years nearly on this earth. And today we're going to be looking at a very simple, straightforward piece of text in the Bible. So we're in Mark, in case you have been under a rock for the last 5 months, pretty much, or you're a guest. Yeah, we have been working our way through Mark, and we sort of did a chronological view through Mark, and then we had the director's cut, so we went back to bits that we hadn't touched on because there wasn't enough time. But we're back on the prime timeline here. If any Star Trek fans are in the place, we're back on the prime timeline. So that's the original Kirk and Spock is where we're going with that. And we come to Mark 12. And I'm just going to read it straight out of the text. So Mark 12, 28 to 34. One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them good answers, he asked him, "Of all the commandments, which is the most important?" "The most important one," Jesus answered, "is this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this. Love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these." "Well said, teacher," the man replied. "You're right in saying that God is one and there is no other one but him. To love him with all your heart, with all your understanding, and with all your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself is more important than all the burnt offerings and sacrifices." When Jesus saw that he had answered wisely, he said to him, "You are not far from the kingdom of God." And from then on, no one dared ask him any more questions. So just to put it all in a bit of context, hopefully you know now that Mark's writing this, and Mark is not doing a sort of biographical account of Jesus' life. In fact, the early church writers have said that Mark was neither a hearer nor a companion of the Lord. So most of this stuff comes from Peter, and this is Peter's first-hand accounts. Now, we know that Peter was a fisherman, so he was probably relatively unschooled. He didn't have sort of the skills to be able to write down his own accounts. So really this is, in my head, and theologians can correct me if I'm wrong, the Gospel of Peter really written by Mark, possibly, because it's Peter's sort of understandings and observations. So at this point in Jesus' life, we're coming into the last week of his time on earth. And we've had the triumphal entry. I was good. I listened back to the podcasts. Paul talked about and he sort of came in and went out a little bit to Jerusalem. But he's back in. And this is the last sort of, one of the last things that Jesus does as part of his ministry. It's coming to an end, but the disciples still don't really realize this. And what we see in this point is the natives are angry. So all the actions that Jesus has been doing up to this point have really stirred up a hornet's nest with the religious leaders, and it's really starting to come to a head. And they wanted to call him out. They weren't happy with him. He wasn't one of theirs. He didn't come from the internal ranks. He was an outsider, and they weren't happy. They wanted to call him as false teacher. And the latter part of Mark 11 and the majority of Mark 12 are dominated by these various debates and questions that are put to Jesus by people who frankly didn't quite like him. And I sort of got a picture of a scene when I was thinking of this, of a man in a courtroom standing there. And instead of having a prosecution and a defense, you've just got a prosecution and maybe another prosecution as well, just going at him, hitting him with all these questions, trying to catch him out. And they were trying to catch him out either through Jewish law or Roman law. They weren't fussed either way. They just wanted to get him. And at this point, they've been trying to trip him up for a while, and they were getting really frustrated. So there's two groups, the Sadducees and the Pharisees. The Sadducees had their turn, and they were done. They were like, we can't get him. We've tried, failed to catch him out, and we can't get him. The Pharisees weren't done yet. So we arrive at verse 28, and this Pharisee steps up. Mark tells us one of the teachers of the law heard them debating, noticing that Jesus had given a good answer. Matthew gives us a little bit more detail than just a teacher. He calls him an expert in the law. And this guy would have been the go-to guy. So he's called a scribe, and he's well known to all the Pharisees and Sadducees as a guy who's really gone into depth in his religious knowledge. He would have been the guy that they would have went to if they had religious questions. And he steps forward, and he's got this prepared question. And he says, of all the commandments, which is the most important? In other words, which command is most necessary to obey? Question, audience participation. How many commandments are there? Easy question.
10.
No. This is Jewish law. 613, close. There are 613 commandments. So I thought there were 10 commandments. Looking into this, there aren't. At this point, there's 613 commandments that the Jewish people are following. So when he's asking, he's not asking which one out of the 10 is the most important. It's which one out of the 613 is the most important. And they're divided. They're divided two different ways. The first way is there's heavy commands. So these are ones that are mandatory. You ain't got any choice. And then there's lighter commands, which are less binding. Which doesn't make sense to me because a command is a command is a command. They should all be binding. But in Jewish thoughts, there's less binding and more binding. And then they're divided into 248 positives, so 248 do's, and 365 negatives, so 365 don'ts. Some examples of do's. Showing respect and reverence to father and mother, supporting the poor and the needy, visiting and comforting the ill, returning lost property to its owner, providing solace to those grieving, ensuring employees are paid on time, resting and keeping the Sabbath day holy, praying to God and reciting the Shema, and saying grace after meals. After meals? We do it before, but after meals. And then examples of don'ts. Don't murder, don't steal, don't bear false witness, don't curse the deaf, don't take interest on loans from fellow Jews, don't believe in or worship other gods, don't make idols, don't eat non-kosher animals. This one I'm sure you've all kept. Don't cook a kid in its own mother's milk. Don't put a stumbling block before the blind. Don't leave a person unburied overnight. Interesting one. Don't leave a person don't muzzle an ox while it's threshing. And one for the women, don't shave the sides of your head or destroy the corners of your beards. So we shouldn't be shaving as well. So of these 613 commands, which is the most important? And they're trying to bring Jesus, this scribe is trying to bring Jesus into conflict with Moses. Moses was the guy when it came to Israel. He set out the laws and what the Jewish people were to do. And the thought is if they can bring Jesus into conflict with Moses, they can call him a heretic, basically, and get rid of him. But Jesus calmly replies. I like how it's been described as calmly. The most important one is this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is the first and greatest commandment. So Jesus answers them by quoting the Old Testament. And he's quoting a passage from Deuteronomy chapter 6, which is well known, and it's called the Shema. And it reads in Deuteronomy, "Hear, Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength." The word Shema means listen, and it's the most popular expression of faith in Israel. The Shema is still used to this day. It can be seen as a passport into heaven for any child of Abraham. It's written on doorposts, and they carry it around these little boxes. I think I've got a picture of boxes and things like that, called tefillins. So written on doorposts, and then they carry it in this little box you see the tefillins on their arm. It's strapped to their arm as well. And along with other scriptures in the Torah, this would be recited twice a day. So this would be very familiar, not just to the religious leaders, but to anyone who's listening. And just remember, Jesus is preaching in the temple, so there's not just going to be religious people. There's a crowd gathered as well. Jesus starts with this because he knows he's talking to a man of faith. But some of the commentators have said that this is an outside faith. Timothy Kelleher, who a very famous author, has written numerous books, has said this: the object of faith is more important than the strength of faith. It is not the strength of your faith, but the object of your faith that saves you. And Kelleher uses this illustration. Imagine you're falling off a cliff, and if you grab onto a strong branch, even with the weakest, the smallest, the slightest faith, that will hold. But if you grab onto a weak branch, even with the strongest faith, you will fall. We need to grab onto the right branch. So Jesus knew he was talking to someone with a lot of faith, which is why he started with something familiar, but he also knew that they were grabbing the wrong branch. The Pharisee had known the words of Jesus, but didn't understand them. So I want to break it down a little bit more. The Shema uses the Hebrew word ahava, which is the Hebrew word for love in this context. And we have lots of words for love in different languages. English, we just seem to have love, and it covers everything. Now, I love different things. I love my wife. I love my kids. I love a well-cooked, properly cooked ribeye steak. I love a nice glass of single malt whiskey. I love an Ireland win at Twickenham. Sorry, I had to get it in somewhere. But it's different types of love. And this Hebrew word, ahava, describes a different type of love. It signifies a deep, action-orientated and faithful commitment to God. Total devotion of one's being, heart, soul, and strength, expressed through obedience to God's commands, loyalty, and loving service to others. And when Jesus quotes it, when it's written in Mark, it's the word agape, which is the Greek version of ahava. And again, it's that deep, intentional, self-sacrificial love. So it's a different word for love than we would have for some of the things that I've already mentioned. So Jesus is echoing the words of the Shema. First and greatest commandment is to love or to ahava God. And it's all well and good knowing these words, but putting them into action is something totally different. It's not just knowing about God that saves you. It's knowing the God that reveals himself through Jesus and by the power of the Holy Spirit. In 2 Timothy, Paul says this: "For I know whom I have believed." He says in other places in his books, "I know what I believe." But here he says, "I know whom I have believed." I have a personal relationship with God that inspired the scriptures, and I know him. Salvation is more than being able to just recite things. It's more than being able to quote certain passages. The scribe could probably have quoted the entire Torah from start to finish. And Jesus is telling him things he already knows, but he didn't know the author of the Bible. He didn't know who had written those words. You know the passage, you repeat it twice a day, but you don't understand what it really means. So we are commanded to love God with everything we have. And our love for God is a response. It comes because he first loved us. So how much does God love us? I remember reading a book to my kids when they were young, as we probably all did, those of us who have kids, called Guess How Much I Love You. Does everyone remember Guess How Much I Love You? And it's the little nut brown hair and the big nut brown hair. And they go on about, oh, I love you this much. No, I love you this much. I love you this much. And at the end, it's I love you to the moon and back. Oh, it's dear to me. And I used to love reading that one to the kids. But how much does God love us? There's a well-known quote. We don't know who the author is, but it just seemed to fit well. I asked Jesus, how much do you love me? And he said this. And he stretched out his arms and died. We love Jesus with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our mind, with all our strength, because he first loved us. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Our only response to his love is to love him. But how do we do it? How do we love God? It's broken down. Jesus lists it out. 4 different ways: heart, soul, mind, and strength. Let's take each one at a go. Heart. So how do you love someone with all your heart? Well, you put everything into it. You absolutely put everything into it. We have an expression for not loving things with all your heart: half-hearted. And how often do we do half-hearted things? Has anyone given up anything for Lent? Has anyone broken it yet? Yeah, half-hearted effort. Has anyone done a New Year's resolution that's still going? Yeah, still got great full-hearted effort. If you've broken it, half-hearted effort it is. Stuart McCloskey chasing back Smith yesterday for that tackle. Full-hearted effort. He put everything he had into that, for those that watched the game yesterday. If we love God with all our heart, we put everything we have into it. What about soul? Loving with all your soul means dedicating your entire inner being, your will, your emotions, your thought, and your consciousness. It can be characterized by vulnerability, total surrender, aligning your life's purpose with the beloved, and acts of service and constant devotion. Yeah, that's how we show love of our soul. And then our mind. So I've learned an expression recently from my daughters. When they come to exam times, they keep telling me, I'm locked in. Have you heard that from them? I'd never heard this before in my life. I'm locked in. Dad, I can't do that. I'm locked in. Can you take the dog for a walk? I'm locked in. And that made me think, this is them, their mind's on that one thing. They are focused on that. So they're locked in. It's an active intellectual pursuit, and they're locked into that. So we've had heart, we've had soul, we've had mind, and then we've had strength. Most of you know I had a wee bit of a back injury about 3 years ago now. And one thing I find hilarious that I've been left with is I've been left with a skinny leg. So my right leg don't quite work like the other one. And when you see me in shorts, which you will see me soon because we're almost there. I had shorts on the other day and it was a bit cold still. But we're almost in short weather. You'll see my right calf muscle's really skinny. And that's because I haven't used it. So the nerves are damaged and it doesn't work anymore. But I haven't used that muscle, so it's faded away. For muscle to be working properly, it has to be used. It has to be built upon. Strength is built only when it's used. And if we're to do something with all our strength, we have to use it. We need to continue to use it, and it will grow. And then when it's called upon, it will work properly. So we're to love our God with all our heart, all our soul, all our mind, and all our strength. In just 2 simple verses, Jesus reminds those who are gathered, the most important commandment is love God with everything you have. Love grows over time. It grows over use. And as it does, it motivates us to do more and to love more. And that's part 1. Part 2, we get a part 2 in this as well. Jesus goes on, not 1 command, but 2. The second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. There is no command greater than these. The first command talks about our duty to God, but the second talks about our duty to man. And we see loving God is often revealed by loving people. And we see this throughout the Bible. 1 John 5:1, if we believe Jesus is truly Christ, we are God's children. Everyone who loves the Father will also love his children. And it goes hand in hand with the first command. You cannot love God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your strength, if you don't love his people. 1 John 4:20. If someone says, I love God, and hates his brother, he is a liar. For he who does not love his brother, whom he has seen, how can he love God who he has not seen? Let's break it down a bit. First, our neighbour. So who is our neighbour? So the Greek word is plesion. I apologize to any Greek person in the room. I'm sure I'm butchering that. It's used widely in the Bible, and we tend to translate it into English as our neighbour, but more accurately it's one nearby or those nearby. There's a different word for those actually next door. That's Johanntus. That's a different word. So it's those nearby. And it doesn't just mean those right next door. It's the wider people. So being a good, Carrick Vineyard, I've got a map. I know. All I need now is a clip of The Chosen, and this is a Paul Daniels talk. So I haven't got a clip of The Chosen. You're all right. So it's not just a Bible term for those in Jerusalem, but it's Judea, further afield in Samaria, Galilee, Egypt. You have to remember, this is the world that they know. They have it's not like the connected world now. I can find out what's going on in Japan if I want to. Just have to look up the internet. This is the world they knew. They probably had no idea what was going on in Scotland at that point in time. It's really not that far away. So first, our neighbour. We're talking, when it says love your neighbour, about a broad spectrum of people. The second, love again. And it's that same word. It's agape. It's that selfless love. Same word that's used when it's talking about God. So we are to love our neighbour and love God. Let me tell you, this isn't easy. And I actually think it's getting harder. And in this little part of God's wonderful creation, I think we found it difficult for a long time to love our neighbour. Have to be careful what I'm saying here, because I know this brings up a lot of emotions in people as well when we're saying love our neighbour. I grew up in a council estate in Glengormley, and we didn't even like the people in the council estate next door. So we didn't, never mind the people down the street from North Belfast. And that's the way we're told to do it. And sometimes it's tagged on with faith as well. And it's just not right. It's just not what I'm reading here. It's love God. It's love your neighbour. It doesn't say you got to love those who look like you. It doesn't say you got to love those who dress like you, love those who sound like you, love those that eat the same things, or even love those that support the same football team or rugby team, or who have the same beliefs. It says love others as much as you love yourself. Like with God, love is not just a feeling, it's an action. Our love to others is seen in what we do. Do you ever get roped into something in church, maybe, and you think, I cannot be bothered. Why am I here? Why am I coming down? Yeah, driving in the car. I have so much more to do in the house. I need to do this. This is more important. Why am I bothering to even come down? These people don't even want me there. I don't even like them in the first place. But you come on down the road and you do it. Do you know what that is? That's love. Love is an action. When you do the right thing for the right reason, that glorifies God. And God teaches us what love is through that. As I've been preparing this talk, I've learned plenty of things. But one thing I've learned is you can love those you disagree with. You don't even have to like them sometimes. Romans 3:8-10, Paul says this, and this is taken from the Message. Don't run up debts except for huge debt of love you owe each other. When you love others, you complete what the law has been after all. The law code, don't sleep with another person's spouse, don't take someone's life, don't take what isn't yours, don't always be wanting what you don't have, don't you can think of finally adds up to this. Love other people as well as you do yourself. You can't go wrong when you love others. When you add up everything in the law code, The sum total is love. So practically, how do we love our neighbours? Well, thankfully it's laid out for us. Leviticus gives us some really good examples. You can leave fallen grapes for the poor and the foreigner. So when you go home tonight, put out a wee pack of grapes. Just leave it for anyone who's walking by. Don't lie, don't deceive, don't rob your neighbour. Don't hold back the wages of a hard worker. Don't spread slander. Don't seek revenge. Don't bear a grudge. Instead, you should love your neighbour as yourself. Practical ways, but you will be able to put this into the context of where you are today. How do you love your neighbour? Maybe it's having them over for coffee. Maybe it's going and helping out at something in your local community. You need to work that through. Jesus demonstrates how we love our neighbour in the parable of the Good Samaritan, and I make no apologies for just reading it straight from the Bible. On one occasion, an expert of the law stood up to test Jesus another time. "Teacher," he asked, "what do I have to do to inherit eternal life?" "What is written in the law?" he replied. "How do you read it?" He answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbour as yourself." "You have answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this and you will live." But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbour?" In reply, Jesus said, "A man who's going down to from Jerusalem to Jericho, when he was attacked by robbers, they stripped him of his clothes and beat him and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. "Look after him," he said, "and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you have had." Which of the 3 do you think was a neighbour to the man who fell into the hands of the robber? The law expert replied, "The one who had mercy on him." Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." It's really clearly set out who our neighbour is. It's someone who is in need. So Jesus has told the Pharisee scribe to love God and to love his neighbour. And this is how the Pharisee scribe responds. "Well said, teacher. You are right in saying that God is one and there is no one but him. To love him with all your heart, with all your understanding, with all your strength, and to love your neighbour as yourself is more important than all the burnt offerings and sacrifices." When Jesus saw that he had answered wisely, he said to him, "You are not far from the kingdom of God." And from then on, no one dared ask him any questions. What a response. Jesus had shut them up. They were done. They had no comeback to this. They realized that they'd exhausted all their questions and they were not able to catch him out. No one dared ask him any more questions. To answer all of the questions that Jesus had been asked, the answer was, love God and love others. The sum of it all is love. As we come into land, just sort of in a conclusion, really. When Philip and I joined this church 10 years ago, maybe 11 years ago, probably fair to say our faith wasn't in a good place. I certainly myself wasn't in a good place. I'd lost nearly all of my faith. I'd very little in the way of either emotional or spiritual maturity. Some say I've still got a way to go on that. And I'm working on it, and God is working with me. Thank you for journeying with me on that. But the first Sunday we came in was a summer Sunday in August. We felt something different. I remember going out and sitting in the car and just went, yeah. We couldn't put our finger on it. We couldn't define it. But looking back now, I think it's pretty clear what it was. And it was love. It was a non-judgmental, caring, faithful love for both God and his people. And it didn't just come from a few. We saw it in everyone around. Can I encourage all of you? young and old, followers of Jesus for many years or relatively new, make love an action, not a feeling. There are people walking in this door every single week who need to see love for God and love for others, and that's where we should start. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. Love your neighbour as yourself. There is no greater commandment than these.
Thanks for listening to the Carrickfergus Vineyard podcast. If you'd like to find out more about our church, please visit our website, carrickfergusvineyard.org.